let's now take a look at who this president was. And some would argue he is the greatest of the modern presidents of the United States. Certainly, he was the president elected the most times. Let's have a look at Franklin Delano Roosevelt. In some ways, he's my favourite president, as well as, I guess, having my favourite presidential memorial. He's a man who has so many dimensions that we don't see memorialised in other monuments. For a start, when we see the FDR memorial in Washington, D.C., it's rather unassuming and human. The memorial is made up of 4 rooms, and this is the 3rd room of this open-air memorial. It's quite low. It isn't elevated like the Lincoln Memorial. It's not a tower into the sky like the Washington Monument. It's not like some Roman or Greek monument, as Jefferson's is. In this image, he's pictured with his dog, okay, with one of his quotes. It's in a quiet, reflective location. We often see Roosevelt seated. The monument emphasises very much the values and qualities of the man. The man himself, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, was born outside the city of New York in New York State in a place called Hyde Park in 1882. He was from a wealthy and prominent family. He was a well-known family, and he had private tutors, went to a private boys' school, and attended Harvard University, where he was considered underwhelming and average, just a simple C-range student in a place of high achievers. He went on to study at Columbia Law School. Columbia is in uptown New York, Manhattan. It's an area bordering onto some of the poorer areas of the time. It was bordering on and still borders onto the area of Harlem in New York. He found law, the study of law, boring. He was known for his hard-working attitude, however, and in 1910 he ran for and won a state Senate seat. He married Eleanor Roosevelt, and what's interesting in his monument, in the 4th room of his monument, there's a memorial to his wife. Eleanor Roosevelt was his 5th cousin. They got married in 1905, and she was the niece of a previous president, Theodore Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt. You might know Teddy Roosevelt from Night at the Museum. Here he is, played by Robin Williams and Ben Stiller. He is also the president who gives his name to the teddy bear, and you've probably had a teddy bear in your life. The story goes that he refused to shoot a bear that was captured on a hunting trip during his lifetime. Franklin Delano Roosevelt's family was reasonably large. Eleanor had, with FDR, 6 children, one of whom, Franklin, the child, died in childbirth, in infancy, not in childbirth. They had a follow-up son called Franklin Jr. His dog, who was pictured earlier, Fowler, was a Scotch Terrier. The story goes that Fowler, on the moment that Roosevelt dies in 1945, starts barking and growling uncontrollably and rushes out of doors and then stops and stares in the distance at the death of Roosevelt. Quite a touching tale, and people are wondering if something Fowler knew was that his beloved master had passed away. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, it's suggested, had an affair, with Lucy Mercer. Interestingly, the monument that's built to him includes gender and possibly sexuality, because it's interesting. There are many, many stories that Eleanor Roosevelt may also have had affairs with one of her close associates, a female. So we raise issues in this monument not only of family life in all its complexity, but sexuality and human experience and all of its, complexity. Eleanor Roosevelt was a high achiever in herself. She was the first US delegate to the United Nations, and pardon my typos in there. She was the delegate to the United States between 1945 and 1953, the first delegate. And she was also there in 1961. She was appointed to help write the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. She chaired the UN Human Rights Commission and was the chair of the President's Commission on the Status of Women in 61 to 62 under President Kennedy.